I'm late. I was in the back room playing like 9 o'clock had not come and passed.
All right. Well, there's 4 of us at this point.
Okay. Yay.
Which is good. And I just remembered to turn on the recording, so that's good.
Oh.
I was just talking to Mr. Townsley about the topic for today, and he accidentally read ahead into Hinduism, so he's ahead of the game.
And but behind on Islam.
Yeah. And Ricky, you may not have had a chance to do any homework for this week since you had an accident yesterday.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk today about the things that I want you to kind of remember, and you can go back and do the reading before you write your report, which is due on Friday. And so see my presentation. It's on video that I posted for Monday, which tells the story of Muhammad's religious experience, his experience of the transcendent, in which he heard the voice of an angel speaking to him, telling him to recite, and then over a period of time gave him what in effect is the Quran, the holy scriptures of Islam. And I talked about how that became what all happened with him and became a religion, and a worldwide religion. Today, I want to put that in a larger context, talks about some of the specifics of Islam, and kind of get those in your head. And the first piece I want to get in your head is the timeline. When did Muhammad live? When did Islam begin?
Muhammad, was it in Mecca?
Yep, that's where.
It's at Iraq.
No, it's you're in the general region. So
I have 16th century Saudi Arabia.
16?
16th century?
No, that's way late.
600 years right after death of Christ.
Yeah. So it was in the 600s of the Common Era, after Jesus, and it was in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, I got that part right. What was the date again? The time again?
It was, I think it was 610 when he had his revelation starting.
Okay. Common Era.
The Arabian Peninsula is this big thing of land south of Israel and Syria, just east of across the Suez Canal in that area of Egypt and Africa. It is considered an Asian country in the sense that all those Middle Eastern in that part of, from Iraq down to Israel and Syria and Jordan and so forth are thought of, considered Asian countries, but they're all brown people living in a desert kind of an arid environment. Right.
I read that wrong. I should have. I read 6th century, but I wrote down 16th century. So I'll fix it. Yeah. Okay.
I thought that may be.
How did I miss that? Okay.
So it's important to keep that timeline in mind,
Yes.
to see where and when did these religions emerge. So Christianity, what's the birth date of Jesus, and what are we thinking for that in terms of the calendars?
That was like 300 years right after Christ died.
Well, so what year in the accounting of years do we count the time of Jesus? It's a tricky question. The answer is 0.
0.
Year 1 of the Common Era, starting around the time of the birth of Jesus. We're not sure when that was, of course,
Mhm.
but that's how we count our European,
Right.
the most common calendar. The Jewish calendar is different. The Islamic calendar is different. The Buddhist and Hindu and Chinese calendars are all different. But that's in terms of what our culture generally tends to. That's one. So when were the prophets of Israel, the Old Testament prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Micah, and so forth? When were they?
You talk about wait, repeat the question again.
When in that timeline would we put the prophets of Israel, the Jewish prophets of the Old Testament? That's not commonly known. They
Yeah, and
were.
it's not,
Say what?
I was just saying,
Wasn't it about Joshua's time?
I don't recall reading.
Okay, Joshua was a lot earlier than the prophets.
Okay.
Moses and
Then that-
Joshua, the creation of Israel, then the kingdoms, and then the prophets came. And the prophets are around 800 before the Common Era, before Jesus. Okay.
Are you speaking about Islam now, though, right? Or did you switch to
putting-
Christianity?
I'm putting the context, the time context for you.
And this is for all of it.
Yeah, just kind of
Okay.
see where they
Okay,
all start.
okay.
Good morning, Kia.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you all?
All right.
Good.
So very late. If the prophets of Judaism started around 800 before Jesus. Jesus at 1 or 0. Then 600 years later, we come to Muhammad. Very different time of history, and a relatively recent religion compared to the other older religions in the world.
Mhm.
And Saudi Arabia did not have a major religion in it at that point. It was still polytheistic, lots of different perspectives and lots of different tribes, and no unified culture in that point.
Yes.
So that's part of the culture, the background of Muhammad. So Muhammad was a kind of a seeker. He was a spiritual thinker. He was worried about his people. And as I said in the presentation on the video, because his people were being split up and divided by their prosperity, by their sense of greed and capitalism, they became prosperous. And instead of taking care of themselves and each other, they started looking out only for themselves. There was no unity. There was no religion. They felt bad because they were in contact with Christians and Jews who had their own religion and their own languages. God had spoken to them, but no God had spoken in the language of the Arabs, or the people of Arabia, and so they felt bad. That was the stuff that was going on in Muhammad's mind and thought when he went up to the mountain for a retreat. And then he had this religious experience, this experience of the transcendent. It's important to kind of connect. That's the connecting piece for all of these religions. They start with some kind of experience of the transcendent. That the story is told based and then interpreted according to the context and the history and what's going on in that person's life. And then it gets spread to other people with the stories and beliefs, and it becomes a religion. That's the way I want you to be able to see all of these religions have a connection to some kind of transcendent experience. Muhammad's comes along in 600. So so this class then, so that's the background of Islam. Put it into context. What, if you've done some reading, what idea or ideas of God do Muslims believe in, that Muhammad propound in the Quran?
Allah is one God. There's no other God.
Yes. Monotheism.
Allah is one God.
Mhm.
So that makes it what kind of a religion?
Monotheistic.
Right. Very monotheistic. They're just devoutly monotheistic. There are no other gods. And so what does that say about Muhammad? Was he a god?
No,
He's a
he's
prophet.
Yeah,
Pro-
Muhammad is that, and that's the second line of their statement of faith of the first pillar. They say in their prayers every day, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet.
Mhm.
They repeat that every day. That's the big thing. What else do they believe about this Allah?
What did he believe? What else he believed in? Allah. To think you have to confess.
I missed that. Say that again, please.
I think you have to confess to him.
Yeah. So Allah has some requirements for human life, doesn't
Yeah, yeah. There's a
The
lot of legalism. There's some laws.
five pillars.
he? Yeah. The pillars, exactly.
Yeah.
Which the other day I spelled with one L, but it's two.
It's a. There
Yeah.
would be the prayers. To
Yeah.
pray 5 times a day.
That's number one, is prayer. 5 times a day, and do they just bow their heads when they pray?
Yes.
They do more than that.
Yeah, there's a whole posture
They have to kneel down and put
kneel
the
down and face
foreheads on the ground.
yeah, and they have to face Mecca.
Exactly.
Yeah, they have to face Mecca.
What's the second pillar?
I think you have to read the scripture of how you pronounce it?
Quran.
The Quran. I don't think that's one of the pillars.
Oh yeah, fasting.
Okay. Yep. So fasting is one,
And then giving to the alms to the poor.
right? Which is specifically addressed the issue that Muhammad was worried about, is people weren't taking care of the poor and the marginalized. This becomes one of the things God says, you've got to do this. This is what you do. All right.
Then they take it is encouraged that they, within their lifetime, they have to take a pilgrimage
Right.
to Islam or to Mecca.
Yeah. Which they call the Hajj, H-A-J-J. Yep,
Confess.
that's the first one. That
Yeah.
prayer. Well, actually, no. I'm sorry. Yeah, Now you got me confused.
They're bullet pointed.
Yeah, the first one is confession. I got that wrong.
Yeah, that confession that he is the one God. Is that
Yeah.
Okay. Then prayer, then
First one
giving.
is the statement of faith and confession.
Yeah.
Allah is one God and Muhammad is his prophet. There they are. You're right. So we start with confession, prayer 5 times a day, fasting in Ramadan, giving alms, and an annual, at least a once lifetime
Once
pilgrimage.
a lifetime. Mm-hmm.
Pretty sturdy requirements.
And that prayer, I mean, the prayer is very stringent too. It's listed. I think these are different ways. I don't know if they have to do them all. Yeah, it's a prayer sequence that they go through. Standing with hands to the side in recognition of the lordship of Allah.
Mm-hmm.
Standing with thumbs on the earlobe and fingers spread out wide. So it's very.
Yeah.
I look up and I see you doing it.
Practice that. I don't know.
It's like
I'm an old man. I'm getting
stand
up.
on one leg and jump.
It'd be good for me to get up and get down, probably.
Yeah, but there's a whole list of guidelines on how to pray.
Yeah, very specific. So so that's another idea. God has requirements. What other things do we know about this God? Is that similar to any other gods we've heard about?
Yes, there are similarities to other gods.
They consider the high gods.
It was the high God that the people of Arabia believed in. That's right. But what else do we know that by comparison with Jewish and Christian religion, for example?
I mean, they have a high regard for the Quran because I mean, it's God's word.
Yeah.
A very high regard, just like the Bible, as far as Christianity.
K-O-R-A-N or Q-U-O-R-A-N. Which is very similar to the Bible for Jews and Christians, the sense of this is God's word to us. This is what God said to us to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the interesting pieces of the idea of God is that the Muslims believe and Muhammad believed that it's the same God as in Christianity and Judaism, not a different God.
Right.
Yeah. I did read that one.
Well, there's something that stuck out, and this is a difference. And I guess it's called zakah. I was trying to pronounce some of these words, but is a legal requirement stipulating that each Muslim must give 2.5% of their wealth to charity each year.
Wow.
And then there's a segment where there's a voluntary donation.
On top of that.
To give on top of that. Yeah, it is on top of that because you cannot not do this. And there's where the legal part started with in my mind. It's like, okay, so, we believe that there's a free will in giving, but this is stipulated. Like you have to do this.
In Judaism and Christianity, there is a specific percentage requirement that's not often taught. Remember what that is? It's called a tithe. And many churches require 10%.
Well, but the word require, there's where because it is a free will giving. It is a test of faith, not you have to do this or else.
That's one of the tensions in Christianity, right?
Okay.
You really have to do that, but it's up to you.
I think is this something like hold on, I'm echoing. I had to get you on my phone too because I could not hear you on the computer.
Okay, so
Let
is
me
that
try
working?
to take this echo off. Hold on. I don't know. Am I echoing to y'all?
No, we're
Okay,
hearing you
good.
okay. We're
Okay.
hearing kids
So
in the background, but that's all right.
I feel like I've either read something or heard something about the 10%, even if it's like you don't have the 10% money wise, you can do it like your, what is it called? Like how you in church, like if you're ushering, like the time you put into
Right,
church.
Yeah.
yeah,
Time, talent, and
Yes, okay,
right.
okay.
yeah,
The
yeah,
time, talent, and treasure, right, yeah.
and
So is
treasure.
that like true, or is that like what you were saying, Miss Pauletta?
Yeah,
That's
I mean
what's
it
called the
is. I
tithe.
mean, as far as Christianity is concerned, your tithe, it is 10% of your time on a minimum. I mean, you can kind of gauge. I gauge
Yeah,
my time, stuff like that. My activity stuff at church. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, but there's
Time,
there's
talent.
a interesting similarity. The Christians and Jews had 10%. The Muslim says 2.5% plus what you want to give on top of that to really help out.
Mhm.
So that's an interesting difference that Muhammad kind of forms that it gets formed in God's word to that. Somebody raised the question in their paper, an early paper, but why do they pray on Friday night instead of Sunday?
Why is it
Their
Friday?
their mosque
Yeah.
worship services are on Friday nights.
Mm-hmm.
How did they come up with that? And what's there a similarity with that with Judaism and Christianity?
Hmm.
So anybody know when Jews have their worship services? Do you know the word Sabbath?
So that's going to be
They
Saturday.
So it's a Saturday.
They
Yeah.
some of them on Friday nights as well. The Jewish.
Right. And that
The-
came from the commandments in Moses. Seventh day, you shall worship God and put aside the seventh day as a day of rest, right? Which was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, not Sunday. So the Jews follow that because it's in the Old Testament of the Sabbath day, and the Sabbath day begins at sundown. They started their days at sundown, so they have their worship services on Friday night.
So the difference, I'm sorry.
It's
The
all right.
difference would be the calendar, right? Just simply the calendar that
No,
each
that's not the
religion follows.
that's not the way it works. The
Oh.
reason Christians went to Sunday is a slightly different thing. But first, notice the similarity between the Jews and the Muslims. They both do Friday night Sabbath. The Muslims don't call it Sabbath, but that's the same. It comes because they have a lot of reference for the Jewish laws and the Jewish prophets and the whole. It's the same. They consider themselves children of Abraham. So that's why. When Christians started putting together their worship service, they were needing to distinguish themselves from the Jews because they'd fallen out with Jewish people. And they said, let's do worship on the first day of the week, which is the day Jesus rose from the dead. And so that's why Christians worship on Sunday instead of Saturday and Friday. And you're right, Paul, and it's partly calendar in that more contemporary people don't think of the day starting at sundown. They think of the day starting at sun up the next day.
Okay.
So that's where the Christians deal is.
I have like a, I don't know, question, comment. I
Good.
don't know. So I was, when I was reading on the Islam
Mhm.
literature or whatnot, like I see that even like when it's the prayers on the Friday, that they still are, I guess, mainly involved just men only.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, why is that? Like, is it because the women are like with the children? Because I know they were saying something about school service and all that, but I don't know. I just feel like maybe it's still like in the olden times where they felt like women just, I don't know, didn't need, I guess, to be involved, I guess. Or like still from the very beginning, you know, when church first started and it was really just men.
Well, I've looked at some of that history, Key, and that's a very important question. Uh, the the business about erasure that I talked about last week in terms of Christianity, very early on, women were very equal in Christian religion and had women leaders and women ministers and women bishops. But then men got a hold of it and said, no, no, we got to be in charge of this religion ourselves. And patriarchy took over. And then in Armstrong's book, in the chapter on Islam in there, on page 156, no, 158, women were among Muhammad's best supporters.
Mhm.
And they noticed that the Quran addressed men only. And then she says, unfortunately, as in Christianity, the religion was later hijacked by the men who interpreted the text in a way that was negative for Muslim women. And so now the Quran is not literally anti-women, but it has been interpreted to put women in a subservient role. Women are not allowed in worship because they're second-class citizens.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
many Muslim societies, abusing women is just perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But then in a lot of Christian societies, it's okay too. So it's hard to it's hard to throw rocks.
Yeah. Keen talked about that very vaguely. It was just my one little insert, like, you know, the women were invited, but they really just don't come because the, you know, type, it was almost like that in her, in Keen's book.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a continued issue, and women leadership in the church and what's their role. I heard there was a Muslim scholar, a woman Muslim scholar at University of Louisville, who used to come to the seminary and give us talks. She was very strong in pointing out, no, the Quran doesn't say women are second-class citizens. Women really are important according to the Quran, but it has been interpreted very differently by men who are in charge and want to hold power. So now that's a good question. Yeah. So it's the same God as the Jews and the Christians. They consider themselves all part of the same general family of people, from Abraham down through the different branches of the Abrahamic family. It's often now called the three Abrahamic faiths. So Muslims, Jews, and Christians, and we do a lot of things in Louisville together at certain times of celebrations with the Muslims. So there's a quick question. What is the house of worship of a Muslim community called?
Mosque.
Correct. Correct. What did I do? I lost it. It's important to know what these different things are called. Mosque, right? What is the religious leader of a mosque called? We call the leader of a Jewish synagogue, the rabbi, the leader of a Christian community, the pastor or the minister. What do we call the leader of a mosque? You might run into that one.
I just didn't jot it down, but I'm looking for it.
These are all ways of being familiar with this religion as we encounter it in the community, because we have a lot of mosques in Louisville now. You might be finding them. I-M-A-M, Imam, maybe 2 M's, yeah. So the Muslim leader in a local community is called the Imam, I-M-M-A-M. All these little things to stick in your head. Now here's an interesting question. I realize we haven't talked about this in terms of Christianity before, as we've spent the first half, more than the first half of the semester, talking about more familiar religions, early Judaism, early Christianity, then Black religions, Black Christianity, and then white Christianity. Now we're talking about another religion. We have to think about different views about salvation. How do you compare the idea of salvation? How does God save people in Christianity to Islam?
It appears to me that with Islam, it is your works. You have to abide by a certain action in your life in order for Allah to say good and faithful servant, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's merit based.
It is. It really is. It's what did I say? That page 141 in Keene is a description of the burial practices, and there's a little sidebar on the left side. Muslim tradition, it's really little, teaches that 2 angels visit the grave after burial and question the dead person about their fitness for the next life. And the mourners come and recite the right answers to the questions so that the dead person can give the right answers and be accepted into paradise.
Hmm.
So that's a suggestion that it's, as you say, Paulette, it's merit based. It's you gotta be fit. You gotta have passed a test, kind of an entrance exam.
You know, which really it forces a good lifestyle.
Yeah, it encourages lifestyle. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Encourages, yeah. Encourage. I said force. You said encourage.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So what's salvation in Christianity? How does God save a person in the Christian faith?
We just have to accept that He is.
You mean you don't have to be good to get into heaven?
Yes. You definitely can't go around. You have to keep the commandments. The commandments are very important, but but you can't work it off. You can't say, okay, I'm going to build this. I'm going to pay this. I'm going to.
Right.
But we do have to be kind and take care of the temple. And so I guess, we have some very similar guidelines, certain things that I don't know if not taking care of your temple will cause you not to
Right.
be saved.
But there's a big controversy, and not everybody teaches it the same way about Christianity. whether it's faith or works. And
Yeah.
the book of Romans has a lot of stuff in it about faith and works.
Mm-hmm.
Is it by your doing all the right things and being all the right places and saying all the right things so when you meet the heavenly judgment day, God will say, yeah, okay,
Good.
you've checked the book and you've checked all the check marks and you can come in. Paul in Romans says, no, it's not. That's too much like the Jewish religion. It's
Mhm.
not by your works alone.
Right.
It is by faith alone. But when you say, I believe in Jesus Christ, I live my life for Jesus Christ, Paul says that leads to a good life
Okay.
because you want to live that good life because of what Jesus has done for you.
Yes.
So yeah, and if you say you believe in Jesus and don't live a good life, you say, does that person really believe in Jesus?
Right. Yeah, because then you cause somebody else to question it, which that's a no-no.
Right. Yeah.
You know, don't make your brother stumble and
Right.
type of.
So a real distinction between Christianity and Islam in that respect, in terms of what God does to make life eternal. Christians also have had a long-standing belief in a life after death. There's Jews, interestingly enough, do not have a strong belief in life after death. There's a whole lot of the Old Testament that basically said, when you're dead, you're dead. You better live your life good now. This is where you find God. And that's a big difference between Judaism and Christianity and Islam. So ideas of God, to summarize where we've been.
Now,
Yes, sir.
Christianity, right? When they say, God has reborn, right? Does that relate to the way we believe that when Jesus reborn, right, is to renew everything that we used to be to become new?
So you're born again, right?
Right.
Into the faith when you accept Christ, and then you're transformed by this new way of being yourself. Exactly.
Yeah, because it describes how when Jesus chosen their prophet to follow him, right? His followers, right?
Mhm.
Majority of them have did a lot of wrongs, like what's her name? It was a woman in I forgot her name. Woman in one of his followers, uh, Mary.
No, Mary Magdalene.
Yes,
Hmm.
she was like a prostitute, and you
Maybe.
had try to remember one of them that used to crucify the Christians. I can't remember who.
Yeah,
Um,
but yeah, a lot of the stories are about turning your life around, repenting, and becoming a new person, and and Jesus as the Son of God does for you, right? Yep.
Now I noticed that the Muslim community get that completely confused about when they were confused that when you believe in Christianity, when they believe in Jesus, that they look at him as a God, right?
Mhm.
They
Right.
didn't get the point about why we believe in Jesus versus in our vision of how we believe in Jesus, right? We
Right.
believe in him when he renew himself, that it's actually teach us to be a new person. In their version, they assumed that he was a good man that taught us good things, but they didn't believe him as a God. But they
Prophet.
have that questions. They have that wrong understanding, saying that we believe it's Jesus as a God, and
Right.
he's the Son of God. But
That's a big,
we
exactly.
believe that he sacrificed his life just to give us a deception that we could be new again and not be the same. This is where they get that confused. I noticed that.
Yeah. For the Christians, Jesus becomes God. That's where they came up with the idea of the Trinity. We
Yeah.
talked about it a lot. So it's one God, but three different persons, and Jesus is and has that power. So that's Christianity. For as Muslims, Jesus is a prophet. He said he's very good. They revere him, but
'Cause I've been
not as a savior. Yes.
because I did encounter that because I had a bunch of friends who were um, uh, Muslims, and
Yeah.
I was trying to learn the difference between the Muslims and the Christianity. We had the same belief that we believe in the same God, but they had an argument between our beliefs about Jesus Christ.
Right.
So they will get that confused about on the religion part about how we look at Jesus Christ as a God. He was a son of God, but he died. They didn't understood the real meaning why he died on the cross,
Right.
and why he died is to renew who we are once we were once bad, or basically we're sinners,
Right.
but we were new as new person. We were forgiven to become something new, to better ourselves, to give us a chance to go to heaven.
Right. Now, what you have just described is an excellent description of the doctrine of Christianity about who is Jesus and how Jesus saves people. That's exactly the doctrine. That's what's taught in Christianity. For the sake of this class, I would like to encourage you to begin to see the Muslim faith and these other faiths as having their own ideas and views, and not so much that they're mistaken, but they're different than yours.
Right.
The story they told themselves that has worked for them for 1400 years is that God is all everything, and there's no secondary gods or Jesus or men. And that's what makes life worth living for them. If we're going to be dealing with them, to tell them they're mistaken and they're wrong doesn't help build good community relationships. I can believe that they're wrong in my heart, but I probably don't get very far by telling them you're wrong and I'm right. That make any sense, Ricky?
Yeah.
So you are correct in your description of Christian doctrine, and I would hope you would begin to see there's a way of seeing, oh, there are these other religions out here and they have very different ideas. And I can't say, it's not up to me to say they're wrong. Some people like to say God will sort all that out. I don't have to. And we're going to run into even more of that when we get to the Hindus and the Buddhists, who have very, very different ideas of God. It's interesting that the Muslims are very similar in lots of ways. They're cousins of the Christian faith. So it's interesting to play with that. Yeah. Which brings me to the last topic of the morning, Well, let me stop and see. Those are all the basic ideas that I want you to have in your minds about Muslim, the timeline, where they came from, what their basic ideas of God are, how they compare and contrast with Christianity and Judaism. What are the requirements? Where do they worship? Who are their worship leaders and so forth? Salvation. What questions do you have about Islam that we can straighten out at this point?
Well, there was a segment in Keen's book that says Muhammad is not the founder. And I searched and searched and searched and actually said that it's an insult to Muslims. They take that as an insult when people say that Muhammad is the founder. That's in Keen's book, but I've not been able to find anything.
Interesting. I didn't catch that.
Okay, let me see. It was one of the little sidebar things. 120. Our reading started at 1. Yeah.
That was the thing.
Okay, at the top of 123, it says Muhammad was not the founder of Islam, and it is offensive to Muslims to refer to their faith as Mohammedanism. The faith of Islam had a divine origin. And I mean, I searched, but everything says that Muhammad was the founder. So I didn't know if that was a trick question.
That was another thing, right? They were, when I noticed on some of the Muslim community that they were trying to prove it about the state, at that religion part about basically what they saying the compared to the Christian faith about believing Jesus Christ versus when they holler about the understanding of how they compare each other about on the religion part about how the belief of God, right? I try to remember what they try compare something about I can't really get it out.
You're talking about the arguments about whether one is right and the other one's wrong?
Right.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that going on. Absolutely right. And people will always argue about whether my religion is better than yours.
Yeah.
And sometimes people kill each other over that, of course, which is a really great way of honoring God, I think. But that's the way it goes. What I'm trying to suggest, an academic approach. Here it's a college level class, and I want you to take a curious learning thing. And so if you meet a Muslim person and they want to argue with you, here's a little trick of how do you handle that. Say, instead of arguing, why don't you just tell me why your religion is so important to you? I want to hear what's important. I want to understand. Help me to understand your religion. I may or may not agree with you, but I will at least understand it. And then maybe they'll have a chance to ask you, okay, maybe you can explain to them your religion, your faith, and make that and see if they could listen. And you can build community around our differences instead of arguing about who's right and who's wrong. That's a more history of religions and study of religions approach instead of arguing about it. And it's based on a value that says as the world is smaller and smaller, and we're all more and more together in this world, we've got to learn how to live with each other rather than fight each other. And that's a little way of doing that. Does that make sense to your question, Ricky?
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't get it out right exactly. I didn't try to argue, but I was trying to understand their
Good.
point of view.
Yeah.
And I was trying to see where have this belief about this, what I'm not seeing, because I didn't understood or even know what Quran is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was curious. This like I experienced about Mormon,
Mhm.
right? It was another form of Christianity,
Yeah.
right? In Mormon, they read the Bible, but they have another book they call a Book of Mormon,
Right.
and they're supposed to be talk about the other I think the 7 stones. It's supposed to be the missing tablets of
Right.
the 10 Commandments.
Right. Yeah. So that's the approach that I'm recommending. You're right on target. The famous saying is, seek first to understand and then to be understood. Often I want you to understand me. Well, if we're talking and we're arguing, I'm more likely to listen to you after you have listened to understand me. Then I feel safer to talk to you about that. That's the way that works. So you were right on target on that, Ricky. Let me go back to Paulette's question about Muhammad as the founder of Islam. I hadn't seen that. I hadn't noticed that before. And the little blurb says, because they says it is of divine origin.
Yes.
And that's the story. Muhammad didn't think this up himself. It was given to him by the angel as the word of God.
Yes.
This is the holy word of God. So he's just the prophet. He's just the messenger. And so in that respect, I suppose, not the founder. He was, in my way of understanding it, he was the person who received this and
Yes.
who told the story to others and became the central leader of the very beginning of that religion.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but don't call it a founder if you don't want to.
Well, I know, right? And I can kind of understand because he, was a man.
Yeah.
But he did receive the message.
Yeah.
So that was, yeah. So I guess I clearly don't want to offend anybody.
Right.
So, but for classroom sake. Yeah.
When I was growing up, way back in the last century, this faith was called the Mohammedanism.
Mm-hmm.
Mohammedanism.
Mm-hmm.
They were called Mohammedans,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a parallel to Christians. And it was in the European head to
Mm-hmm.
think, well, they're following Muhammad, so they must be Mohammedans, like the people who follow Christ are Christians.
Christians, okay.
And this is saying, well, that's not quite fair.
Okay.
We're Muslims, which means people who submit to Allah,
Mm-hmm.
not
Okay.
followers of Muhammad.
Oh, Muhammad in that
In
aspect.
that sense, yeah.
Okay.
That's my
Okay.
sense of what that means. I don't know.
Yeah, and it makes sense because they do specify Muhammad, however that word is. I have to look at it to say it. I'm not looking at it right now. Muhammadism, whatever it was. But okay. I mean that makes sense to me.
That's the way I would make sense of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Okay. Other questions? Gary, have you been hearing any of this? Maybe not.
Sir?
I just check and see if you ever got your sound working. Have you heard most of this?
Yes, I've heard most of it.
Okay. I'm glad you didn't miss it. It was a fun conversation. Good.
Yeah.
You have any other questions about Islam before we move on?
Not at this time.
Okay, you've got to read up. So let me talk about what's next. Next week, we're gonna move rather rapidly through the next 2 weeks of the next two religions. So this week Islam, next week Hinduism, which is the first religion described in the Book of Ankim. A very, very different religion, a much, much older religion in a very different part of the world, a very different culture. And I want you to read that chapter of Keed about that and look at the questions and look up, pardon me, the definitions and work on that. And then there'll be a one-page paper at the end of next week as well. I'll give you a video on Monday. We'll meet in class on Wednesday, and just the fun just keeps right on rolling on. I need to remind you that in about 2 weeks, your term papers are going to be due. I know you're wanting me to remind you that. That term paper is a huge chunk of your class grade. The class grade is each of these weekly papers, which is the way it's designed to help you put down what you're learning as you're learning it and reflect on it and let me see how you're doing. There's the midterm and the final exam, and then there's the paper. All of those are a piece, and you can't do without any of that stuff. If you haven't gotten all of your other papers in, you need to be working on those so you're not too far behind. But any questions about the term paper?
No. On term paper, we have to pick a religion, right?
Right.
Okay.
Pick a religion and study it. Get some resources beyond the textbooks. See if you can find some local, look at 10 videos, whatever, and write it up, at least 5 pages. Not too tough, but it's got to be well written.
Okay.
All right, there's the bad news for the day. You got to write a paper. But this is college, friends. This is college. And I wanted to be a good paper, competently written in good form. Have somebody read it over ahead of time, proofread it. Make sure your references to the places where you got that is very clear so you don't get accused of plagiarism, all that stuff. And holler if you have any questions about it. Okay. I think we're done.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
But I see you. I gotta take care of my insurance policy and about that car and rental car, and then I gotta call my job again.
Sure hope that gets worked out for you, Ricky.
Yeah. I got full coverage, but it's been years because I've been riding a bicycle for 8 years.
Oh.
So I'm kind of relearning all the stuff.
Right. Okay. All right. Good luck.
Okay.
See you.
I'll see you.